What's good? What's good? Good peoples, good peoples. How you doing out there tonight? This is your man Kevin Mullins, Mr. I Rep the Most High, and we hitting you with another episode of the Uncommon Report podcast. We got a special guest on the line today. I can't wait to bring him in, but before we do that, we're gonna check out some of his tunes real quick. Like, y'all check this out. Y'all tell us what you think. Drop some comments. Let them know if you rocking with it.
I'ma keep it a buck with you. If you add 12, I'ma cop it a G. See, I was 13 when I got expelled cause it had me some green. Alternative school back in secondary was the only time I had some G. Last distinct and I'm visionary. Hope a vision blurry like you're smashing the heat. Catch a release. Missionary, how they flocking like geese. Underrated that position it is. Apostle passion, burning messages deep. Call them dating, got your circular reason. And dragons overhead, out of your reach. Brodie like to take you into the sheets.
Drop a comment.
Give a reason to think.
Let the
Ash me
people
like it's lint on the fleece.
know what it is.
Like the lino I eat, should keep it clean, whether shader is furry. Either way, I'm in a hurry to feast. Feel the glide and the marinated peach. Each out your house, home your lease. World trees, savory sweet, chakra fruit. 1221 see my power release. Apathy is the coward's defeat. Hope the fur grapes is sour they eat. Why are you listening to their opinions offended when you know that you don't agree? Good and evil knowledge can't be deceived. Forbidden fruit, how it falls from the tree. Through certain polygonous release. You get the apple, I'ma get the peach.
What's good? What's good, good peoples? How y'all feeling? Y'all just heard some tunes from dear Brodie Dharma. He is on the line tonight. We about to go ahead and bring him in the stage and introduce the brother. Phenomenal artist, and got them bars from the stars. You feel me? Coming in live. Let's bring in our dear brother Brodie. Brodie, what's good, my G? Unmute yourself. We can't hear you, bro.
Okay, I'm still muted.
Yeah, you good? You good? You good? What's good, Brodie?
Well, man, we're just out here blessed and highly favored.
Absolute. So, my big brother, man, this musical journey that you've been on for a plethora of years, you know what I'm saying? Most people don't know, but we're gonna dive into this timeline. We're gonna give them a little bit of the backdrop on the story, you know what I'm saying, of Mr. Brodie Dharma. He gonna talk to us tonight and let us know what it is that he does out here in the community as far as the artistry is concerned, what he does as far as his coaching is concerned. Hey, Brodie, man, talk to the people and let them know what it is.
So I started working music back in, maybe I was about 15, 16 years old when I first started rapping. And I was probably about 16, 17 when I first started music production. I always felt like I was a little bit different. So I didn't feel like the music that I found around me was representative of what I wanted to make. So I learned how to produce for myself. And just throughout that process, I was heavily influenced by Odd Future. That's really where a lot of my musical inspiration came from. So I started making beats around 16, 17 years old. And it's just been something that I've loved. But music for me has always been more so an avenue for primarily two things, right? Like an expression of my emotions, but also a vehicle for my philosophies and my theologies and different mindsets and outlooks I have on life. And that ties into my coaching because, you know, rather than taking an approach of saying that a song I make has to be the right way to do things, or the conclusion or the stories are always the right way to do things. Sometimes I like to make songs that are cautionary tales, or I write a song as I'm going through experiences in life, and then I may come to the conclusion later. But that's the truth of the matter. So when I first started rapping, making music, I was more so into like shock value, because I was heavily influenced by Odd Future. Like to this day, my favorite rapper is Earl Sweatshirt. To this day, my favorite artist of all time is Frank Ocean. And because I was heavily into like Odd Future and Tyler Creator and listening to Eminem back then, that's something I was really into. But after the progression of getting that, Remember one day I had a performance, and I used to be like a speed rapper, and I had a performance one day, and my father said all my songs sounded the same, so I kind of slowed it down. I was mad at first, but I get mad sometimes, and I live.
So about how old are you whenever you actually start performing? I really want to take it back just a little bit, if we can. But answer that question first, and we'll take it back just a tad bit and stroll up.
So I started performing when I was 16 years old.
Okay. Okay. So you 16.
Yeah, I was 16 when I first started performing, and when I was 16, I started performing. First started doing open mic nights and talent, and then I started at the Black History Month programs in Wilson High School.
Okay. Wilson. Ah, historical black high school at that. You know what I'm saying? From the 1800s. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, what inspired you to get into music? Let's start there. Like, what actually inspired you and captivated you and grabbed the you is to let you know like this is for me. What was it? What was that motion like?
I think for me, it was finding ways to process emotion and
Mm,
where you couldn't really communicate with the person. Like when I was 16, I remember experiencing limerence for the first time, right? Not love, but limerence, because love is well, love is an individual experience, but limerence is a different experience from love altogether. Most people, when they think about love, what they're really thinking about is limerence. And when I experienced that for the first time, that was what inspired me, the overthinking, the rumination that was involved with that thought process. That was what inspired me to write this poem called The Flower. And I remember the first time I went to perform, it was at a talent show in maybe 2012. I was like 2016. I mean, I was 16 years old, so it was 2012 or early 2013. And during that period in time, I think the two songs I performed to were, as far as the instrumentals, were Poetic Justice by Kendrick Lamar and Drake, as well as Chum by Earl Sweatshirt. And to this day, those are still some of my biggest inspirations. But I originally wrote The Flower to Pilot Jones by Frank Ocean, but I couldn't find the instrumental for it, so I did Poetic Justice instead. And really, after listening to Poetic Justice, is when I became a Kendrick Lamar fan.
okay, okay. Cool, cool. So once you understood, you know what I'm saying, hey, I'm inspired by this, I'm intrigued by this, I'm enlightened by this. You know, you start to do you start to write or are you freestyling? Because some people, you know, they get the freestyle vibes, and then some people get the writer vibe. Which one was it for you?
I'm a writer through and through. I can't freestyle it. Kind of like I say, my writing process nowadays, it starts mostly in my. When I start writing a verse, I'll probably write 60% of the verse in my head before I write anything down, but it'll be like a very tedious thing. So, like, let's say I'm working a shift, I work night shift. I've been working night shift for years. So, let's say I'm in night shift, I'll think of a line, like, that's a good line, it's pretty clever. And then I'll keep going over that line, and then I'll add like one line at a time. And then I might go back over it and change words to turn double entendres into triple, quadruple, quintuple, sextuple entendres. So I like to, oftentimes I'll finish writing something before I fully understand what all it means. And to me, that's kind of prophetic in a way. And it sheds light on this idea of, how do I put it? Just not auto writing, but in a way of not a Freudian slip, but when you're writing something and you don't think in the moment about all of what it'll mean, it's like an expression of the unconscious mind. Like, you see, my project is called Young Negus, right? So I didn't even know too much about Carl Jung before I started my shadow work. But after I did more deep dives into it, I started to recognize, you know what? That's what this is. So it's different concepts within Jungian psychology, and one of those is the unconscious mind. So I like to just have diarrhea of the mouth a little bit, and then see how all those things tie in together later. Like I live my life halfway between planning things out months and years ahead of time, and just doing whatever I feel in the moment.
Cool, cool, cool. So you're a writer. You actually answered one of my next questions about the songwriting process, and um, that was beautiful. That was beautiful because me myself, I actually write as well, and I kind of take that same lane. When it comes to writing, I might have one line that sparked the inspiration, and then I follow it up with another, and then in between, I figure out how I'm going to wordplay the cadence of the rollout. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, yeah. I just recently, more so over the few years, got into the whole freestyle. But you should try it sometime, though, bro. You should try it sometime.
But when I freestyle, it's like I might have one good ball every 30 seconds. Like it might be every 15 seconds, gonna be pauses and BS. But I'll say what really inspired me with that aspect of songwriting, because I can look at each individual artist for the aspects of my songwriting that inspired me. So, like Frank Ocean's my favorite artist. He has, like, I'm an English major. I didn't graduate, but I finished my coursework, right? And my coursework worked like this. It's like, as an English major, you learn that an attention grabber is important. So I would go and study artists that I like. So I would listen to Frank Ocean songs, and it just like that first line or two, that first bar would be an attention grabber. Like he has a song called Sweet Life, where he says the best song wasn't the single, but you weren't either, right? And I'm like, yo, that's kind of hard. Or you think about uh, the song Pink Matter, which is going to be a song that plays before I start my performance, and it's like before he even starts, he says the peaches and the mangoes you could sell for me. But then he says, what if? What do you think my brain was made for? Is it just a container for the mind? This great gray matter. Or I think about other songs like love crimes, like talk to me and I better not hear a word, do me baby, but I better not feel it, girl. It's certain songs that when it starts with that attention grabber, then you can kind of go into this process of just expressing your mind and your thoughts. And I don't remember the exact word for it, but you can kind of just start with this poignant attention grabber, and then
Hmm.
just express yourself in a very like translucent, um, ethereal way. Where after you set the tone with the attention grabber, other people can kind of attach their own stories and narratives to the rather than it being a clear cut like one note A B C D story. But that's mostly something I do when it comes to like singing, songwriting, or whatnot. Because rapping wise, and I do want to touch on this, rapping wise, like I said earlier, is my favorite rapper. What really blew my mind was I always loved rap music, but it was because when I loved rap music, it was since I was a child. But for a long time, Lil Wayne was my favorite rapper, right? But Lil Wayne would freestyle, and I'm like, man, I can't freestyle as good as this man. I sit there and try, and I think about how good he raps. But then I heard Earl Sweatshirt write songs when he was 15, 16 years old, and I heard him when I was 15, 16 years old, like a year and some change older than me. And I remember hearing some of his songs, and I would think of all of the literary mechanics, like assonance, internal rhymes, entendres, using the previous line to as like using your punchline, next punchline, and doing things in a way where he could rap slow, and I would still have to listen to it 8, 9, 10 times to understand what he's saying, because there's so much depth in every word that's used in that song.
I
And that's
think I think that's the beauty of an artist, though, bro. You know what I'm saying? I think if you pack so much into the bars, you know what I'm saying? That make them think, was they talking about this? Nah, was they talking about that? And it kind of all comes back, full circle, 360, like, yeah, they was kind of talking about it all, you know what I'm saying? And I think that's a blessing in disguise because there's songs that's been written, years ago, and people still unraveling the messages today. You know what I'm saying? So, with that being said, with your writing, um, and you're a lyrical individual as well, what is what is hold on. Let's get into this beat selection when it goes along with the writing though. Because you're a writer and you make beats, you're a producer as well. So how do you marry those two? How do you marry what it is that you're hearing as far as the lyrical aspect, and then you're able to merge it together
Well,
with the production side?
so I'll put it like this. Rapping, oftentimes I might write the rap completely separate from the production, or I might write it to a different beat. Like most of the time, I'm not writing raps to my beats. That's something most producers wouldn't want to say. If I'm writing a sing song, then I might think of lyrics that are sung while I'm producing it. But most of the time, if I'm rapping, I'm not writing my rap directly to that beat. It's just that if somebody else has a beat and I have my own beat, I might as well rap it to my own beat. If that makes sense. Because mostly I started making beats and I sell beats. So that's one way that I make money. That's one of my streams of income. And it reminds me of those Kanye lyrics. So it's like, now I'm rapping off the beats they were supposed to buy. I guess I'm getting high off my own supply. You know, so oftentimes I'll write in that particular manner because I don't know what it is. Oftentimes when I'm producing, it's a separate mindset than when I'm in bar mode. When I'm in writing mode, it's almost completely separate. And because it's so separate, it's like it helps me avoid boredom and avoid stagnancy. So when I'm in writer mode, I'm often in writer mode and I'm not really producing that much. But when I'm in producer mode, I'm oftentimes not writing either, unless it's singing writing, like for like neo soul tracks or R&B tracks.
Okay, okay. So tell us how you approach that production process for your music. And what role do you play in that process?
So my process when it comes to production is it really depends. It's different times where it's different things because I have some beats where I don't use any samples, and then I have some beats where I'm very sample based. I think most of my production is mostly sample based. I like to take inspiration in a very organic way. So let's say that I am watching a movie. One time I made a beat and I have a song that should be on the second or the third part of Young Negus that should be featuring Seminova and Lucenide called Thorny Rose. And I think I told that story when we were at the Myrtle Beach, at the Myrtle Beach place where we went to go perform during the tour. And I was telling a story of how I made the beat. I was watching Eyes Wide Shut one day. And the story behind it is I was listening to Love Crimes by Frank Ocean, right? And in the background of Love Crimes was this story, this narrative of the conversation between the protagonist and his wife. And she was talking about you're very sure of yourself, right? About, sexual duplicity as a conversation topic. So I would always see people who would make like these quote unquote Illuminati videos and they would talk about the movie Eyes Wide Shut. So, and then Frank Ocean oftentimes make references to Stanley Kubrick. So I went back and watched Eyes Wide Shut. And while I was watching Eyes Wide Shut, I heard this piece. It was this jazz piece because I used to be in a jazz fusion band with Alexis Pipkins. That's AP. He now has his own band, Soulful Touch. Y'all need to check out his Tiny Destiny about to come up soon. They're competing
Big
for
shouts out to AP.
out the AP, right? That's my brother right there. We fam. And I was listening, I was watching the movie, and I was with my girl at the time. I said, go ahead, Shazam that. And it was Oscar Peterson's I Got It Bad and That Ain't Good, right? And when I heard that piece, I went Shazammed it, got the track, Then I started chopping up the sample, chopped it into like 40 different chops, right? Because if you know about sample chopping, you know, some people they'll just do a loop. I do that sometimes, but this time I had like 40 different chops, made like 4 different loops, and you know, did the some automation on the filters, different things like that on like the high pass filters, all that other type of stuff. And then after I did that, it's like that was the beat right there. So I made a lo-fi beat and called it Thorny Rose. So like my production process oftentimes is organic based off of things that I hear that inspire me. Like when I made the intro track for my project called Peach, I was listening to a few different things. Like I was listening to How You Feel by James Fauntleroy. That's my second favorite artist of all time, James Fauntleroy. I think he's one of, if not the greatest modern day songwriter that there is. And he's probably my favorite auto tune background vocalist ever, right? Right up there with Ty. Right. So I sit there and listen to James Fauntleroy all the time, and he had this song called "How You Feel" that has this beautiful, it sounds like upright bass and these piano chords, and there's just these chords that were at the end of the song, and I sampled those chords to make Peach, as well as maybe some drums from Roll Hill by Jill Scott, and maybe some drums from Window Seat by Erica Badu. So
Okay. Nah, if you had something else to say, go ahead. I mean, we rolling with it.
so for me, my production process, it's a natural flow, it's an organic flow of my real life. So I'm a neo soul head. Like although I'm a rapper, keep in mind I'm a rapper because I don't have the best singing voice. I'm just now getting to where I finesse my voice in the studio to make it sound decent. I've been rapping for years. I've been rapping a decade, like almost a decade and a half. So rap is not new for me.
Hmm.
I didn't want to really start dropping music until I felt like I could produce my own project for one. And I also wanted to, well, I'll put it like this. I'm an alchemist by nature, right? And I love alchemists, but because that's how I am, when I experience things in life, if I experience an embarrassment in one area, I'll say, man, forget it. I'm not scared of what nobody think. So it's like, I might as well try it. I'll try my hand at anything. If I like it, I'll do it. I don't scare when. So I was like,
Look, it sounds like over your journey, right? That you was cultivated in certain avenues, and as you begin to grow in your artistry, other things that you needed, what I'm saying, for this time period, you actually pulled from that as well, from not only the lyricism part of you just rapping, but then we bring it into you even making your production, what I'm saying, your own beats, what I'm saying. There's some that does it, but there's very few that does it well. And I can honestly say that when I listen to your tracks, I'm like, who's doing it? And then you tell me like, hey, I made that. I'm like, wow, this brother not only laying down the lyricism, but he also putting the beats in the motion as well. So when you on this journey, about what age were you when you made your first beat though? Your first production? Was it
uh,
around the same time, that 16 era, or did that come later on?
I'm trying to remember his name. His name was Salik. It was this guy named Salik. I think AMG Salik. I don't remember. I'm gonna see if I can find him on. Guy named Salik. I went to high school with Wilson High School, and while we were still in high school, he would do some Fetty. And I remember one day I was in a, well, first time I was exposed to FL Studio was in middle school. I had a homeboy named Courtney, and he's a great artist. He can really draw. And I've been trying to get some artwork for him, but you know, people have their own lives and stuff. But that's the first time I was exposed to FL Studio. Then when I was about 16 years old, I was exposed to
Tell
Studio.
people what FL mean, because
That's a DAU, a digital audio workstation. So if you want to get into music production, uh, even if you don't know how to play an instrument straight up, you can buy a DAW, a DAW. That's a digital audio workstation. So that's Fruity Loops. So
okay.
saw him working. I asked him if I could make a beat on his computer. I started working on it. I didn't know what the playlist was on Fruity Loops, so I just made a couple of patterns, and I was happy with that. But I wasn't done yet, and it was probably maybe a year later, maybe less than a year later. Don't nobody snitch on me, but I got the crack version of FL Studio when I was like 16, like maybe 17 years old, and around that time was when I started really making beats. That's when I started making beats because I didn't feel like people around me had the style of music I wanted, and I wanted to be able to like make my own sound.
Okay, okay.
But before
So with that being said, like it had to be a journey for it all. You know what I'm saying? So along this journey of being a lyricist, making the beats, coming to, manifestation of that, along this way, there got to be some kind of challenges that you run into, not only as a lyricist and writing with the pen, but also making the production as well. So can you explain, what was some of the biggest, excuse me, what were some of the biggest challenges that you faced along your journey into cultivating your artistry?
poverty. Hey, when you broke, you can't afford studio time. So when I would make beats, I would just like start selling the beats. You know what I mean? Instead of actually making songs with them. That's how I kind of have this split in my mentality between producing and writing songs. Because when I would make a beat, uh, I would write a song, but it was so hard for me to find studio time. And and because it was so hard for me to find studio time, I would write a song and I might perform to that beat that I made, but I would just end up getting to the point where I would start selling my beats. Plus, there was this fear about sample clearance. It's still not something that's all the way out the woods, but I had to eventually get to a place where I recognize, if a song blows up enough for me to worry about getting a cease and desist, that means I did a good job, right? Especially if I manipulated the sample. So for years I would just sell beats. Like there's beats I sold to different people. Still some beats, some songs that's waiting to come out. Like I produced for Incognita. I produced for Maestro the Lyricist. He's gonna have his single Big Shot debuting at my album release party. That is a fire track. This is like South Carolina personified, one of the best lyricists out of our area. I produced for Mike Sound. That's out on all platforms. A song called Sensei. I've produced for Alvin G. Uh, I think he said he's going to drop the song this year. I've been produced for different people, and in the making of Young Negus, a lot of these tracks were songs that I really was producing with the hopes of selling, and people didn't follow through on buying them, or they were like
Okay, Kanye.
collaborative.
I say, okay, Kanye.
Yeah, so it was like collaborative efforts that I was hoping to would come to fruition, and it didn't necessarily pan out, but it worked out in my favor. So it's really four main projects I was working on in the creation of my debut album that ended up being the production that led into it. So one of them was a project I was working on called Anime and Chill with one of my best friends from high school named Dayton, right? Dayton Jackson, and good singer. But we weren't able to really get that together, so I took a couple beats from that. And I'm also working on a web series called Anime and Chill. And I was working on a project called That's What She Said with Chris Dunbar, who is a jazz guitarist who does jazz guitar loops and lo-fi music, and I make a lot of lo-fi beats and stuff. And because lo-fi was a lot of my platform, we would oftentimes rush through the process of doing the production for these tracks, and we wouldn't be able to finish. So I said, you know what? What's more lo-fi than unfinished beats? So I said, I'm just going to clean it up as much as I can and then just do what I got to do with them. We were just finessing through it. And so Chris Dunbar was one person. We were working on a joint project together called That's What She Said, which would really be just like an expression of the anima, right? Like my thought process, thinking about things that women I've dealt with over the years have said to me, and being confused, trying to process those things. And now I know the answers to them, but back then I didn't. So I don't think that the best music is always about having the answers. So even though I have them now, I don't have to say that in every single song to try to be right. And then there was another project I was working on with a woman I was dealing with for a long time called I think it was supposed to be an anonymous project called Baby Girl, right? And it was like an anonymous project, and it was just a bunch of baby makers. But she didn't want to drop it because she was a gospel artist, so it's like we left that alone. So I was like, okay, let me take the beats from that and see what I can scrap out of that to use for myself. And then there was a project I was working on with Divergent Society and Friends. That's Greg Wilder and his wife Heaven Jet, Greg Wilder. Shout out to them, Divergent Society and Friends. That's where I met Conscious, right? Right. That's where I met Conscious. And then I also had that's also where I met Alvin G. And that's also where I met Christian Robinson, who does some bass on my project. I also had some things I was working on with AP, but that wasn't for a individual project. And then I also had a project I was working on with Lace the Hands after I did a couple singles with her. I mean, a couple of features on her project Physical Education back in, I think, 2020. Uh, After that, 2020 or 2021, I think it was 2020, we were about to do a collaborative project together. And some of those tracks I ended up taking for myself. So a lot of this was scrapping that together and then just songs I was making on my own later on. Then there were some tracks I was working on with Bobsled Jimmy. So I think maybe 40 to 60% of this is completely produced by me, and another maybe 40 to 60% is co-produced.
Okay. Okay. Well, we've traveled this vein so far. We've talked about where things came from as far as the lyricism and the production side, and we even talked about a little bit of combining the two, right? And it seems like these things actually make up the artistry of Brodie Dharma. Can I use that expression?
Yeah, and I think there's one more element to it.
Yeah. Uh, And tell us what Brodie Dharma means. As you traveled this journey and you find these things that actually help cultivate your artistry. Tell us what your name means, Brodie Dharma.
So I'll say that my first artist name was Brigade, right? AWOL Brigade. I don't know. I just came up with some random stuff, right? But the story behind Brodie Dharma was this was a name I came up with after I left out of being a hardcore gospel rapper myself, right? So I was a gospel rapper uh, because when I got saved at 10, right? I was 10 years old, but I really dedicated myself towards the journey of pursuing this relationship with God and pursuing this this journey when I was about 18, right? I went celibate. I did all that stuff, right? I went like a whole year without cursing. I wasn't smoking. I wasn't drinking. I quit listening to secular music. I quit all that. And I recognized the role that repression would have on my psyche. And that repression eventually led to a mental break that I had around 2015. And that mental break made me realize that having a very hyper legalistic mentality towards my spirituality wasn't something that was beneficial towards me, nor the relationship I was in. So, in the end of 2015 towards 2016, I was studying Romans 5 and Romans 7 and 8 when I was doing my biblical studies. And this is what started my path towards shadow work. So, Brodie Dharma, let me answer your question first, right? So Brodie Dharma means a lot of different things. The first thing is this, and you'll see this with some of the references in the song that you played called Peach. I remember being maybe 15 years old and I was watching Hidden Colors because I'm a proud black man, right? And as a proud black man, I was watching Hidden Colors, and I saw in Hidden Colors that they said that the founder of Kung Fu was Bodhi Dharma, right? Which was a dark Asiatic black man in China, I believe, a long time ago. And that was something that always stuck with me, Bodhi Dharma, because I was the assistant boxing coach in my local boxing gym at 19 years old, and I've always been someone who is very enmeshed in the martial arts and combat sports world. So Brodie Dharma was something that meant something to me because he was both a martial artist and a philosopher. And I was thinking about just the concept of Brodie Dharma, right? So Brodie represents a lot of different things. One thing it represents is brotherly love. So think about Brodie like the Church of Philadelphia, like being poor but being full of love, right? So is Brodie, right? But it also means like your bro, like someone who's closer than a friend. It's a brother. That's your Brodie, right? But Brodie also represents that guy who gets the girls, right? You know, the dude who just has that swag to him. That's what Brodie also represents. And
AKA Jody.
hey, I got my song Adidas. I say I'm the original Brodie. I'm the Tyrone they clone. And then I got to then when you think about what Dharma means the nature of reality or the nature of a thing, and that's within Hinduism. So it's really about, I remember being in a position in my life where I would spend a lot of hours of my life listening to uh lectures of Alan Watts, right? I'm sure everybody's gone down that rabbit trail of listening to Alan Watts interviews and listening to like the Syzygy by Carl G. Jung, right? And listening to these Alan Watts interviews is really about this interstice, this liminal space between Western philosophy, which oftentimes is the pinnacle of that is fundamental Christianity, Eastern mysticism, which would oftentimes
Talk.
the pinnacle of that would be like Hinduism or Buddhism. So Brodie Dharma is Brodie represents the the urban black culture, the stereotypes of being a black man in America. You know, like Kendrick Lamar said on Black of the Berry, my hair is nappy, my you know my nose is round and wide. If you know the lyrics, you know the lyrics. And feeding into those stereotypes while also being someone who's more esoteric and well read and studied. So it's that mixture of the Western philosophy and urban black culture, as well as having understandings of spirituality and Eastern mysticism.
Hey, you guys have heard it here first from Brodie Dharma. This is,
Uncommon rapport or common.
you feel me? The uncommon report. But that wasn't my next statement. This is a special artist. He has so much that he's pulled from and created the essence of Brodie Dharma. And he's giving it to you guys live tonight. You know what I'm saying? I can't wait till this showcasing tomorrow, bro. This is gonna be epic. I think you've given a lot of insight on how you cultivated yourself, um, from being a producer and a lyricist, and also about songwriting. And you've given the people opportunity to hear your challenges as well. And most people are not, open to the older generation. I'll say that because I'm learning something with this new generation. If they think it, they it's coming out right then. And I appreciate the honesty. You know what I'm saying? Letting people know your path, your journey, the transparency of it all. Um, we need more of that transparency. We need more of these individuals within the artistry to not kick it so entertainment, you know what I'm saying? But actually endow themselves into the music and speak from their life, speak from their lifestyle. And I appreciate that, man. Um, it seems like you've evolved as an artist over time and you've, excuse me, you've accomplished so much behind the scenes, and tomorrow is your big showcasing, right? um as y'all can see right there on the ticker, you know what I'm saying, we got a showcasing tomorrow. Brodie Dharma, talk to the people, man.
You put my Cash App on the thing because
I ain't got your cash app on the thing, bro. I don't know your cash app. We do other arrangements. But look, they gonna have an opportunity to scan that cash app tomorrow, man. Talk to the people and let them know what you're doing.
because if I'm preaching and pass the collection plate around. Hey, but check this out, man. Yeah, for me, I'll say this: the story of Young Negus, like the project, is really a progression, right? It's a progression of what happens after I leave out of religious indoctrination and sexual oppression. And the funny thing is, man, I never stopped believing in Jesus, man. I only got closer to God. You know, it's scary to people, the idea that you can believe in Jesus without being afraid of going to hell at the same time. Like I have,
I think that goes back to that Eastern and Western mindset. You know what I'm saying? Those people who are dived off deep into religion, you know what I'm saying? Religion. Legion ain't good at all. And then you gonna repeat the Legion? Nah, that's not good. That's gonna always help people to stay bound. But keep going though, bro. Keep going.
as I started my journey with that, it led me to different places. And when you look at my album cover, you see a woman who represents a tree in the Garden of Good and Evil. I mean, a tree in the Garden of Eden. And you can decide for yourself whether or not that's the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, or if that's the tree of life. You can decide that for yourself, right? But there's two wisdoms when it comes to integration. You know, many people talk about the age of Aquarius. This is an age of information as well as an age of a lack of accountability. So we're now in a day and age where overstimulation is so prevalent that I don't believe that once a person has been exposed to overstimulation, that they can truly take a path of what they consider good and fulfill that without becoming a duplicitous individual. So because that, I believe in the concept of integration, sexual integration. And with this integration of mentalities, I see two paths towards integration. There's the peach and the mango, right? So the peach represents following what's considered the right hand path, which is conventional norms, because we all understand that in biblical symbolism and mysticism, the apple represents the knowledge of good and evil. These are neither the apple, these aren't the apple, this is the peach and the mango. So the
I
peach,
mean, that's what people call it. We don't know it to be an apple, but I understand what you're drawing up.
that's why I said symbolism, right? So that's why there's a peach and a mango. The peach represents following the conventional norms and then exploring your inner child, exploring the dark sides and the depths of who you are through following a very structured dynamic. But within those structured dynamics, you have to avoid overstimulation and be disciplined. But you also have to pretty much have gone through a healthy upbringing in childhood, right? So if you're going through a healthy upbringing in childhood and there's a natural level of attraction that's high enough between you and your partner, and you have healthy boundaries and you're like in the sticks somewhere and maybe you're not on social media, then y'all can just be two little hillbillies in the sticks who meet each other and have a good time, and then y'all just in love and y'all high school sweethearts, and then y'all just, you know, be together till death. But outside of that, if overstimulation or childhood wounds get triggered, or limerence takes place, then you have to know how to navigate the dog eat dog environment, which may be sexual duplicity, which may be hookup culture, which may be non-monogamy, which may be the world of BDSM in different aspects, and know how to navigate this while still maintaining your responsibilities and your priorities, and being able to have healthy relationships even in unhealthy environments. So for me, the story of Young Negus, it goes from the place of being in that loving relationship type of environment to recognizing that although I was ready to enter into the place of innocence to take the path of the peach, that wasn't a mutual thing. And when I recognized the childhood wounds that were present, and that was on both sides, I recognized, like, okay, if it's not me, it's just gonna be somebody else. So I got my song called The Garden, and at the end of the garden, I say, why is death so romantic? I'd rather live my life with you. And that's just talking about how, when it comes to healthy communication, healthy environments, many people say that they like healthy communication, but they don't respond to healthy communication. They respond to being manipulated. They respond to being breadcrumbed. They respond to being gaslit. They respond to being manipulated in some way, shape, or form rather than someone being able to communicate directly to them what their needs are. I've always been a direct person about what I want, and a self-aware person, a situationally aware person. So after I found myself in that scenario, many of the songs in the first part of my project are about me entering into the world of hookup culture and then eventually navigating that to being in a position where I knew how to navigate hookup culture without worrying about soul ties. Like, you don't have a soul tie with every person you engage with physically, right? I think that's a false misconception. It's really about if this limerence is an attachment that triggers childhood wounds that you're unable to heal from quickly. That's when it becomes like a soul tie. And men can experience that without physical interaction taking place. So I was just thinking about that. And the story of Young Negus is a progression of me leaving out of religious sexual oppression, going into hookup culture, and then entering into the game of dealing with women in a way to where I could have my way with them. And then getting to the point where this progressed into me getting into dating and sex coaching because I would have conversations with my homeboys or friends, different people I knew, and I would tell them my experiences and they would tell me their experiences and they would hear my experiences and they would be jealous because my problems would be different than their problems, right? And not necessarily jealous, but they would be like, man, how do you do what you do, right? How do you do that? So like they would send me text messages, I would tell them what to say back, or I would tell them what would happen next. And when I would give them advice, they would just send me money if the advice I gave them worked. And that's how I started dating and sex coaching. And it led from hookup culture and being in that game to eventually getting into living the BDSM lifestyle full time. I don't necessarily date in the conventional manner. I'm a BDSM pretty much only guy when it comes to how I interact with women I deal with on a romantic level. And then it led from that into the third part of my project, which is attempting to take the things that I learned through that process of going from hookup culture into being in that game and being a side dude and all that other stuff to being into BDSM and becoming more mature to attempting to take those things I learned along the way to repair the relationship I had from high school when I was younger, because I never truly stopped dealing with that woman through that entire period of time. And you have to hear the project to see how it turns out. So, and it's not even in the first part. So in the first part, it ain't even about that. So you're gonna have to wait and see what happens.
And look, he's explained everything that you need to know. I need you guys to show up tomorrow night at the Healing Arts Exchange. That's 617 West Palmetto Street, Florence, South Carolina. At the Healing Arts Exchange, Brodie Dharma presents. Talk to him. Young Negus.
Young
You
nigga.
feel me? You
And I'll
feel me?
say something about that, right? Along the way, I learned it's a couple of different concepts, and it's a couple of things I need to say real quick before we get off of here, right? So one of them is two main concepts that rang true that are throughout the course of this project, and it's a few of them, right? A lot of it, Jung comes from the term Jungian psychology, right? Carl G. Jung. And Carl Jung talks about he's the person who coined the term the right. So when people talk about the collective unconscious, they talk about the unconscious mind, they talk about the shadow, they talk about the anima, they talk about the animus, they talk about certain archetypes. Oftentimes they don't recognize Carl Jung, who was the student of Sigmund Freud, who is the father of modern psychology, is the person who coined these. So a big inspiration for this project for me was Daniel Caesar's Freudian, because while I was going through a lot of these things and I was in college, I was getting through this stuff by just listening to Daniel Caesar's Freudian album. And one thing that comes from Freudian psychology is the concept of the Madonna whore complex. And really, what the peach and the mango represent are two ways of navigating that, right? It's like the peach is to find the good girl and then to bring that out of her in a healthy environment where you're locked in. And then the mango is to find somebody who's already out there and then to bring those other more sustainable qualities out of her in your experiences with her. But there's also the concept of a phrase I've coined, which is the gentleman gigolo complex. So when I have this honey badger on the album cover, in my experiences, I found that the more I try, in my experiences, the more I've tried to express myself as the full package, or the more I've tried to express myself as a good man, or a quote unquote good man, virtue signaling, man, the less access to women I was getting physically. So I said, man, forget it. If people got to see me as a bad guy so I can get what I want to get, this it is what it is. You know what I mean? So that's kind of just how it worked out for me, man. So I got the mango on the shirt, like,
Hey, look, don't tell them too much because you still got to, hey, you got to still give that, you know what I'm saying, tomorrow night now. You telling them a lot, you feel me? And I know this is for the expectation of it all, you know what I'm saying? And we excited, we definitely excited about all things that's getting ready to happen, man. But you gotta, you know what I'm saying? Hey, don't give them all of it. Let them come to the show and experience it.
oh, they gonna hear the music.
Yeah, yeah. Let's come to the show tomorrow night. Like I stated, you know what I'm saying? We are going to be at the Healing Arts Exchange. 617 West Palmetto Street at the Healing Arts Exchange in Florence, South Carolina. We want to see you there. Come tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Brodie Dharma is going to be in the space. We got Lace the Hands, Conscious, along with Maestro the Lyricist. It will be a phenomenal night, guys. We want to see you there. And this is the Uncommon Reporter podcast with Common Ground. And we growing up one mic at a time.